I'm going to be attempting to create this really awesome toast notification that you see on the right here, but I'm not just going to create the toast notification. I'm going to create an entire library around it that implements all of these different features, and I'm going to try to do it in less than an hour. This is the very first time I'm trying to solve this problem, so you can see my thought process, how I go about thinking about the problem, running into issues, and solving those issues. Welcome back to Web Dev Simplified. My name is Kyle, and my job is to simplify the web for you so you can start building your dream project sooner. And like I mentioned, we're going to be building out this full toast library. Now this is going to be based on the React-toastify library, but I'm actually going to be building it out using plain JavaScript, so there's going to be quite a few differences, but all the functionality is going to be the same. And if we come over to the documentation, we can see all of the properties that are available on this toast library that we need to implement. And I'm going to be implementing probably about 90% of them. There's a few that just don't make sense because they're boring to do, such as things like style. Like we don't really need to worry about that because this is just for our own use case, but it's something that's really easy to implement. So to get started, I first just want to create an index.html file. I want to create a script.js file. I'm going to create a style sheet, which is called styles.css. I'm going to create here just a toast.js file. So this toast.js file is going to contain all of the logic for the library, and then the script.js file is where we're going to actually just use that library. So I want to create this as if it's a library for NPM, and styles.css, this is just going to contain the styles for our actual toast itself. So if we come into our index here, we just exclamation point, I need to link in that style sheet, and also I need to get our JavaScript. So we're going to say script.js, and this is going to be a type of module, just like that. If you're unfamiliar with the module type, I have a full tutorial covering it. I'll link in the cards and description for you. But essentially, I don't really care about having anything in my body. It really doesn't matter. All I want to do is actually have the toast show up on the screen. So the body is essentially irrelevant. It really doesn't matter. So the first thing that I want to do is inside of here, I'm just going to put like a placeholder toast. So we can just call this like toast. Yeah, we'll just call it toast is fine. And inside of here, we're just going to put some text that just says test message. There we go. And this is just so that we can style what our toast is going to look like. So if we just open this up with live server real quick, and I make sure that we go to local, whoops, just copy that over. There we go. So now we have our test message showing up. We can just zoom this in really big so we can see it really easily. And what I want to do is I want to style out this toast. It's going to be really basic styling. I mean, the styling that they have over here, if I show a toast, is honestly pretty simple. It's just essentially a card. So what we can do is we can just say we're going to select our toast. And of course, what I want to do is I want to set our box sizing here to border box. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it some padding. We'll say 1 rem maybe. Background color is going to be white, if I can spell color correctly. And we're just going to give it a simple border of 1 pixel solid 333. Again, this tutorial is not so much about how the actual thing looks, it's more about how it functions. Let's give it a border radius of 0.5 em as well. And we'll zoom that out so it's about more normal scale. This is about what a normal toast message scale will look like. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see on your screen. So there we go. That's about what we're working with. I think that looks pretty good. Maybe reduce the border radius a little bit. Good enough. Next thing we need to do is have a close button that we're going to put in the top right corner. So we'll say toast. We're going to select the after element content inside of here. What I want to do is I want to put in the ampersand times. I'm not sure if this will actually show up. Okay, it does not show up as a X button. Let me just look for HTML entity code times. So what I need to do is just copy this. Let me see. I need to get the actual code for CSS. HTML, CSS code. There we go. So we can just copy this and paste this in here, and this should hopefully give us a X. And the reason I'm using this instead of just the character X is because depending on your font, the actual X is not centered. It's going to be different sizes. So this will just give us a consistent looking X that we can put in the top right corner. So I'm going to position my toast as relative, and this I'm going to position absolutely in the top left corner. So we'll just say top, or I'm sorry, top right corner. We'll say top and right are 0. And what I want to do is just give it a little bit of spacing. So we'll just say that the top is going to be like 10 pixels and the right is 10 pixels. And that looks pretty big, actually. We'll change that to like 5 and 2 maybe. There we go. That looks like it's about in the top right-hand corner. That looks pretty good. Okay, and we don't actually need this X to be selectable to be closing it, because if we click anywhere on our toast, I just want to close the toast message. So it doesn't actually matter that this X is not like a selectable button. It's fine because we're just going to be closing our text anytime that we focus inside of this toast. Okay, so I think that's really all we need to do for our styling. We probably need to have a container for our toast message because we need to make it display in different sections. Also, we should probably give it a max size because if you show the toast here, you can see they have like a maximum width. So we're going to give this a max width, let's say like 300 pixels. Just see how that looks. That looks a little big. We'll maybe do 200 pixels or 250. Now let's do 200. Maybe 250 is fine, because that's about what 100% screen looks like. There we go. So we have 250 pixels as our maximum width, and that all looks really good. So now the next step is going to be actually making it positioned on the correct sections of our screen, because right now it's in the top left. We want to be able to position it in a bunch of different places. As you can see here, we have this position property. It could be top right, top center, top left, and then bottom for all three of those positions. So what I want to do is I want to create a container. We'll just call it toast container. And inside of here, we're going to put our toast. And the toast container is going to have a data attribute, I think is what we're going to use, called position. And we're just going to set it to like top right, for example. And this is going to position in the top right-hand corner. So inside of our styles, we can take our toast container. And we know that we want to position this at a fixed position, because no matter where we are on our screen, like no matter how much scrolling we do, for example, if I show this, I always want it to stay fixed in that top right or top left corner. So position fixed makes sense. And then what I want to do is I want to position it based on that data attribute. So we can say .toast container. We called this data position. And what I want to do is we'll just say like top right for now. And I believe we can actually just come in. No, we'll just do this for now. Okay. So we have top right. We can come back over to here. So I want the top position to be 0 and the right position to be 0. There we go. You can see it showing up in the top right-hand corner. That looks really good. And instead of giving this a max width, I'm going to give it just a width. That way it's always exactly the same size of 250 pixels. That looks good. And what I want to do is I want to essentially have a space. So I think I want to just use margin for this. We can say like 10 pixels maybe. There we go. That way it's just 10 pixels away from the side of our screen at all times, no matter what side of the screen it's on. That looks really good. And I think what we can do to make this a little bit cleaner is we can actually just use 4 separate selectors. One for top, one for right, one for bottom, and one for left. And I believe what we can do is if we put inside of here the caret symbol, maybe we have to put it here, that's going to say select me anything that starts with top dash, and I set the top to 0. Here I want to select anything that ends with dash right, and I can do that by putting the $ symbol on the end of it. So that's going to say select anything that ends in right, and hopefully, if we just comment these out, it should still work, top right-hand corner. Yep, it does. So now what I want to do is we'll just copy this one down. We're going to have left, and we're going to copy this down one more time for bottom. So this should say bottom is 0, and this should say left is 0, and I want to create the caret symbol here. And just to organize these a little better, we'll do that. So now if I save and I come over to here, we should be able to say like top left, goes in the top left. Oh, I guess we need to have center as well. So inside of here, let's add one more for center. And this is going to have a left of 50% and a transform translate in the x direction of -50%. There we go. And I think what I want to do is instead of having my width on the toast, I want to put it on the toast container. And then just the toast should have a width of 100%. So it'll fill the entire container. There we go. Now let's test all these out. We have center. You see that's in the center. And then if we try out the bottom version, you see it's in the bottom on the center, on the left, and on the right. And it might be a little hard to see on the bottom, so we're going to mostly stick with top styling just so it's easier for you to see it's not stuck behind my camera. Okay, that's pretty good. Also, I'm going to give our toast here a cursor of pointer just so we know that it's clickable, because I want to be able to just close the toast whenever I click on it. So when I click, it's going to close out of the toast, because that's how this works over here. You click on it, it gets rid of it. Pretty straightforward. So I believe that's really all we have our styling. I mean, if we have multiple toasts, we obviously should probably style those so they look good together. So let's just put 2 in here. And for our toast, what I'll do is I'll just change the display to flex direction to column, and I'll say like a gap of 1 rem. We'll do 0.5 rem. That'll just space them out from one another. And then if we just have a bunch of toast, they're just going to all stick right next to each other, and they're going to look really clean. Yeah, I think that looks really good. So now we essentially have everything done for our CSS. Our HTML is going to start out empty, so I'll just comment this out for now. All we really have left is to actually do the JavaScript. So let's start with the toast class itself, because we need to think about what we all need to implement. And I kind of already mentioned the idea I have for this. I want to do this using classes. So we're going to say like here, we're going to export a default class called toast. And we'll just give it a constructor for now that does nothing. And inside here, what I want to do is I want to have a bunch of setters. So I'll say I'll have a setter called like position, and this is going to take in a value. And inside this setter, what I want to do is I want to take our toast element and I want to, for example, put it inside of a container that has the correct data position inside of it. So that's going to be what like my position property does. Or I'll have one that says set text. And what I'll do inside of here is I'll take like toast.text content equals value. You know, I would just set the text that way. So kind of the way that I'm going to be handling this is just setters, and all these setters are going to implement all the DOM behavior. So like when I change something, it's going to change it inside the DOM. That's like my idea. Who knows if it's going to work, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. So what I want to do in my toast is also implement all the different functions we need. So we're going to need a function for updating it. We're going to need a function for removing it if we want to remove it programmatically. And I think we probably want to have a function for showing it as well. So we'll just create a show function in here. Whoops, get my styling correct. There we go. So we have a show function, an update function, a remove function. And the constructor, all I want that to do is just take in some options. There we go. And these options, I'm just going to set on our object. And like I said, we're going to be using a bunch of setters for that. So like, let's say that I pass in options for like position. We come over here, you can see we have like position, on, open, on, close. Like, let's say I pass those 3 options in. Well, what I could do is I could say, you know, like position, on, open, on, close, etc. That's a lot to type out. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take in our options. I'm just going to loop through all of them. So we're going to say object.entries. So for each one of my options, I want to loop through it. And what we're going to get is a key and a value. And what I can do is I can just say, hey, this key equals value. All I'm doing is I'm setting the property for the key to the value. So now when I create a new toast, I say like new toast position top right. What that is going to do is it's going to loop through here. It's going to say, hey, my key is position, value is top right, and it's going to set that. And if I have a setter for position that takes in a value, it's going to call this setter and actually do something inside of it. So I can just say like console.log value for now. If I copy this out, this should hopefully work. If I come into our script, we're going to import that toast class, just like this. And then I'm just going to create a new toast. And hopefully this should print out top right to the console. So if we inspect our page, I bring the console over, let's see, yeah, it prints out top right because it's taking in this position key and it's saying, okay, we have a setter for that, call the setter and pass in the value. So this is working pretty much as I expect it to. Now the next step is going to be obviously making it work. So let me think here. Show is going to be pretty easy. This is where we create our actual toast element. So we can say like const toast elem equals document dot create element. This is just going to be a div toast elem dot class list dot add toast. I believe that's the only thing on our toast. Yeah, it just has a class. That's it. Okay. Let me think. Do we want to do anything else? Maybe when we create the toast, we just automatically show it right away. That might be a better way to do this. Because I'm thinking if we take our options into our constructor here, then we're going to need to essentially define those options when we do the show. I guess no, what we could do is we could create our element. Yeah, we could create our toast element here in the front, and we'll just set it to this.toast element. I'm going to make it a private variable, just so we can't mess with it anywhere else. So we're creating our toast element here, and then inside of our show, what I want to do, let's move this up here, this dot. In our show, what I want to do is I just want to append that to the correct location. So whatever position it's currently in, that is where I want to append it to. Maybe I won't do that. Maybe we're just going to automatically show it. We don't even need a show function. For now, we're going to get rid of the show function, but we might take it back later. Okay. So yeah, we create our toast element. That's good. We have our toast element class list. Then what I want to do is figure out how to position it. So position is probably the first thing we want to focus on. So instead of setting a value, instead what I want to do is I want to get a container, because by default, our body is empty. It's going to look like this. But what we want to do is we want to add in a container that's going to be where we position these. And if we already have a container, we want to use that container instead. So let me think here. What we can do when we set our position is we can take the container. So we can say const container equals document dot query selector data position equals, this is going to be equal to our position. Let's do this inside of backticks here. It's equal to our value. There we go. So this is going to get the container for our position. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, and then if we don't have a container, I want to create a brand new one. So we're going to say or create container, pass it in a value. So let's just create a function called create container, which takes in a position. And this is going to essentially do very similar stuff up here. So we're going to say const container is creating a new container. Container dot class list, we're adding toast container to that. And I want to make sure I use that class list up here for my selector. There we go. And then what I want to do is just say container dot data set dot position equals position. And we can return that container. We actually probably want to append it to the body as well. So we'll say document dot body dot append container. There we go. So now up here, everything is working. This should not have a, there we go. Let me maybe turn this into its own variable. So we'll say const selector is equal to that. There we go. We can kind of minimize this side down so we have more room to work with our code. So we're either getting the container if it exists or we're creating a brand new container. Then what we can do is we can say container.append, and I want to append my toast element. So we can say this.toast element. Okay, I think that's all we need to do to make position work. Let's also make text work so we can see the text inside of it. And all I have to do is say this.toast element.text content equals value. That one's really simple to do. So let's see if this works. Already it looks like it is showing us a toast. And if we look here, we're not actually setting our text. So if we set our text to hello, there we go. It's putting the text directly inside of there. It looks like the space is kind of too big. Let me see here. Maybe it's just our padding is really large. We probably don't need as much padding as we have because this looks really big. Let me come into our styles and I'm going to reduce our padding to like half. That's a little bit small, maybe 0.75. Yeah, we'll do 0.75. Again, it's not so much about styling, but I don't want it to be completely ugly, if that makes sense. Okay, back to our index. So this is creating a toast. And we could call toast.remove and we would need to handle removing it as well. So inside of our here, and let's just do like a set timeout. Set timeout. We're going to do it after 1 second. We're going to remove our toast. So back into here, what I want to do is I want to implement this remove function. So what I want to do is I want to take our toast element and I just want to remove it. This should be all we need to do. So after a second, there we go. It removed itself. But also I want to check to see if our container has elements inside of it. And if not, I want to remove it. Because if we go into here and we look at our elements tab, you'll notice this container is still down here, even though we don't actually want this container to be here. We want to get rid of it immediately if there's no more elements inside of it. So what I probably can do is just say this dot, before I remove it, I can say toast element dot parent element. So I can say container is equal to that, and then I can remove it. Or sorry, this is in the wrong section. This should be here. There we go. And then I can say if container dot has child nodes, then do nothing, so return. Otherwise, container dot remove. That should be all we need to do. So it should now hopefully remove the container because it has no children inside of it, and it did. And if we also wanted to add another toast, like 2 seconds later, so for example, 2 seconds after our page starts, we're going to add a new toast that says second, and we're going to put it in the top right location, and we're also going to add a new toast in the top left. And this is going to say third. Okay, let's see if that works. So we have third and we have second. These are a little wide. If I zoom out here, you can see, okay, we have third and we have second. Let's inspect our page to see if our containers worked properly. We have a container for top right and container for top left. That's perfect. So it looks like it's able to remove and show our containers exactly as we want. And if we don't add this top right one, hopefully when I inspect here, we're only going to have a container for the top left. Inside of here, yeah, we only have a top left container. So it's always using the minimal amount of containers possible, which is obviously what we want. That's really good. So now let's think of what we all want to implement for our toast, because right now it's just a really basic message that doesn't do anything. Probably one of the first things we want to implement is auto-close, because that's like the most common thing you're going to do is automatically close this after a certain delay, or just make it not auto-close. So inside of our toast, let's implement that. We're going to have a setter for auto-close. There we go. And in autoClose, what we want to do is we want to set a timeout. And in this timeout, we're just going to call remove. And then we're going to have our value here. That's going to be taken in. There we go. And what I want to do is I want to say, hey, if our value is false, I guess if it's just any falsy value. So we can just say if we don't have a value. So if it's falsy, actually, let's make it so it has to be exactly the value false. So you have to pass in exactly false. So if you pass in false, then do nothing because we don't want to automatically close it. Otherwise, we're going to use whatever the value is to close it after that set period of time. This way, even if you pass in 0, it'll automatically close itself immediately. We can put this on one line to clean this up a little bit. What I want to do is I want to say interval, or actually we'll call this autoClose timeout is equal to that. And the reason I'm doing this, we can just come up here, define that. The reason that I'm doing this, at least the reason I'm thinking I'm doing this, is because if we change our autoClose value, I essentially want to reset the timer that we have running inside of our thing. What I could do is I could say, if this is not equal to null, then I could clear timeout of our autoClose timeout. Make sure I put this in front of it on all those instances. This and this, there we go. So I can clear the timeout and then restart it. That way, if you change your autoClose time after the fact, it'll restart your timer. I think that's what we want. That seems straightforward. I mean, honestly, changing the autoClose timer is probably something you're not going to do, but if you do, it'll reset the timer. Okay, so let's see if autoClose works. First, we're just going to say autoClose of 1000. So if we come back over here, we click save, it should hopefully remove itself after 1 second, and it does. If we pass in false, for example, it doesn't do anything. And if we leave this value off, it also doesn't do anything, which I believe is what we want. Also, what I want to do, going back into my toast, is I want to set up some default options. So we're just going to come up here, we're going to say const default options is equal to, and this is where I'm going to find some default things. So for example, autoClose, I'm going to set to like 5,000. So if you don't set anything, autoClose will be 5,000. And if I could just say here, my options is equal to, actually, we don't want to do equal to, we can just say options. Let me think about the best way to do this. Here we go. So when we do our entries, I'm going to spread our options over our default options. We're going to go like this. So what this, a little bit of code right here does is it's saying take all my default options and then take all the options being passed in. If I make sure I spread this, it's saying spread out all my current options that are default and all the options I pass in, overwrite anything that's not defined in default options. So like anything I pass in overwrites what's in the default. But if I don't pass in an autoClose, like I didn't pass one here, it should autoClose after 5 seconds. So if we give it a little bit of time, I think it's been over 5 seconds. It didn't, oh no, there we go. It's been 5 seconds, it closed itself. So now our autoClose is set to close after 5 seconds. Same thing with position. We should probably give it a default position of, let's just say like top right. This is going to be our default position. So now if we come in here and we remove our position, it should still show up in that top right position, and it does. Okay, so far I'm kind of liking how this is coming along. We have autoClose, we have position, and these are essentially done. I don't need to like mess with these at all. Same with text, that is done. Update, what I want to do is I want to take in some options with update. I want to do the exact same thing that I'm doing up here. So I'm going to copy this, paste it down, and actually what I'm going to do, yeah, here, pass in those options. So for each option in the update, I want to call this function. And up here, I just want to call the update function, and I want to pass it in my default options. So that way I don't have that code duplicated. So now if we call update, we should hopefully be able to change something. For example, if we come into our script, I can say toast.update, and I want to update the text to by. I'm going to do that after a second. So now it says hello, and after a second it changed to by. That looks really good. One thing that I think will break though is if we change our position. I'm not sure how this will work, so let's change it to like top left. Okay, so it does move to the top left, but I bet you that our old container is still there. Yeah, our old container for top right is still there. So inside of our toast, when we change our position, what we need to do is we need to get the current container that the element is in and just do our check to remove it. So, yeah, what we can do is we can just come up here. We can get our, we'll call this current container. There we go. Then we can copy this and we can paste it down here. So if our current container has children, do nothing, otherwise remove it. So I think that works. Looks like we have an error. So let me inspect our page. Cannot read property null current container. Okay. So if current container equals null or it has children, then return. There we go. So now if we inspect, we should hopefully see that that container is removed. And yes, it is. Okay. So essentially any time that we move something from one container to another, or when we remove something from a container, so either remove or setting our position, we need to make sure we get rid of the old container so we don't clutter up our HTML. Okay, that's done. We got position done. We have update done. We have remove done. Now we just have a lot of the more fun functionality, in my opinion, of getting a bunch of these different properties to work. So position, check that off. We're done with that. On open and on close. Those are pretty straightforward. Since we don't actually have a show method, on open doesn't really make sense, but on close does. So we're going to have an on close option that by default is just going to be nothing. So we'll say on close by default does nothing. It's just an empty function. And then whenever we call remove, what I want to do is I want to call that on close. So we can say this dot on close. There we go. And we can create a setter for on close. And I want to call on close. Whoops, this dot on close equals value. Actually, we don't even need a setter because honestly, this doesn't do anything when we set it. So we can just have our update function set the onClose property. We don't actually need a setter for this. So I believe this should work. So if we come into our script here, we just say onClose, and we're going to say alert hi. So now if we set the autoClose to something a little bit sooner, like 1,000, we can see, okay, we already saw the message, but yeah, now after 1 second, it's going to print out that hi message. There we go. Works really good. Actually though, I don't think that's quite working. Let me remove that real quick and let's see. Okay, perfect. When we move position, it doesn't trigger on close, which is good because we don't want it to. There we go. So it's only triggering when we actually close out of the toast. That looks really good. Okay, what is next on the list to implement? So on open, again, doesn't make sense for us. We have auto close, close button. Okay, this one, we're not going to do the close button because we don't want to be able to have people change the close button, but we are going to make it so that it's either going to show the close button or not. So I think what we can do is we'll just do like a canClose. Yeah, we'll call it canClose. And that's either going to be true or it's going to be false. So by default, if we come into here, we're going to set it to true. So we're going to say canClose is true. There we go. And if we can close, what I want to do is I want to set up an event listener on the button that is going to close it. So we can say in our update, actually we can do this in the, we can say set on close. Yeah, we can do a setter for this because we can just say document.add event listener on click. So it's just click. And what we want to do is just remove it. So we can say this dot remove. And we need to make sure we bind this. Oh, this is kind of a pain to do. Let's just create, I think the best way to do this. Yeah, so we could say like this dot remove equals this dot remove binded. There we go. Dot bind this. I believe that we have to do this, and I'll explain why in just a second here. So by default, if we say we're adding our event listener, we're passing in this dot remove as our function, the actual this keyword will not reference our object. It'll reference, you know, something else related to the document being clicked. So by binding the this property to this current object, all we're doing is saying, hey, when we call this function, this, which we reference inside of here multiple times, references the actual toast object itself. So I believe that's why we have to do that. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want to be able to remove the event listener based on this value. So if value is true, then what I want to do is I want to add the event listener. Else, I want to remove the event listener. There we go. that should be all we need to do. So, yeah, let's come into here. We're going to say autoClose false. So it's not going to automatically close. I'm going to get rid of this set timeout for now. So now if I click on this, it should close. It's not. We're clearly doing something wrong. I think it's because we don't have a default for canClose. Oh, we do. It's true. And here we called this onClose. That is my problem. Should be canClose. Still not working when we click on it. Let me see. Nothing. Console.log value. Let's see what this is printing out. Console, it's printing out true. So that means it's adding the event listener for remove binded, which is calling this function right here for remove. So it should be calling this. We just say console.log here. Let's see. Inspect console, click, nothing. Okay. Something is happening. Oh, duh. We don't want to add the event listener on a document. We want to add it on our toast element. First of all, that's a problem. Still not quite working, but at least I added it to the right thing this time. So let's see if we just do like this. This dot remove. This should hopefully work. Okay, that does work. So something to do with my binding is wrong. I probably just am not remembering how to bind something. So let's just Google that real quick. We'll just say JS bind class function. I'm just gonna put React on the end because this is something that you have to do all the time in React. So I should be able to hopefully find a good example of it. On click bind this. That is exactly what we're doing. I'm just trying to think here. So remove bind this is set to remove binded. Why does it not actually call that function then? I could just do this. I think this is going to do the exact same thing. Let's try. And then we can get rid of that whole bind syntax, which I'm terrible at. That's still not working. Oh, I'm an idiot. Let's just back this up a few steps here, and I know exactly what the problem is. We're calling update before we're creating this function. We just swapped those two lines. There we go, it worked. Okay, so I was just trying to access this before it even existed, so that was dumb. Okay, pretend you just didn't see the last 10 minutes of me trying to work on this. So now whenever we click on it, it is removing it. And if we say canClose and we set it to false, so let's do that real quick. We'll say canClose false. Now, no matter how much I click on it, it's not going to remove it. And we should also make this X button disappear as well. So let's actually do a setter for it. So if canClose is true, then actually what we can do is we can just say this dot toast element dot class list dot toggle canClose, and it's going to be toggled based on our value. So now what we can do is we can say, hey, our toast that we can close, then we're going to put an X. So only if we can close the toast do we put the X. So this one cannot be closed, so there's no X that shows up. If we change canClose to true by just leaving it as the default, now the X shows up, we can click it and remove it. Okay, awesome. So canClose is done, text, position, autoClose. We're starting to really get through this pretty quick. So that's our close button. Transition I'm not going to work on because that's something that is in React that's going to be handled on React. But speaking of transition, we should probably add some CSS transition because right now it just appears, and appearing is just kind of ugly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get rid of all of this. I'm going to create a button, and I'm just going to say show toast, okay? And this is just for testing purposes. So I'm going to say document.creaselector button dot, whoops. Yeah, just add event listener, click. And I just want to create a toast. There we go. So whenever I click that, it's going to create a toast. And they're just stacking on top of each other right now. I want to make it so that they are going to slide in. Because right now, if we look over here and we click that show toast, you can see it slides in. It's super cool. You can just see them all sliding in. I really like that. So I want to implement essentially the same exact thing. That should be really easy to do by just putting an animation on our toast. Actually, maybe a transition would be the best option for this. Let me think. Because we want to make it so it animates out as well. Because if we look at this, we click show toast, and then we remove it, you can see it slides back in. So transition might actually be the best option for that. So we can say here that our transform translate in the X direction, we're going to start at negative 110%. So it's going to start just outside the bounds of the screen, I believe is what we want. But I guess the translate is going to depend a bit on the position, because this is going to work fine. We'd have to add like a show class as well. So this would set the translate X to 0. This isn't quite going to work though. Even if we add the transition on here, we'll say like 100 millisecond ease in out on the transform property. Let's make it 250 milliseconds cap. So if we give it a show class, so like in our toast, we can just say we're going to add the show class as well. That didn't do anything. Oh, we need to show the toast. Okay, it already is showing up. We need to add the show class after it shows up. So we can just say like set timeout. Actually, I believe request animation frame is going to be the best way to do this. So request animation frame. And what we want to do is just, whoops, add our show class. Let's see if this works. Okay, that is working. I'm doing it in the wrong direction though. This should be positive. There you go. You can see that they're sliding in from the right-hand side. The problem is though, if we position it in the opposite direction, this needs to be a negative percentage. So an easy way to, I think, fix that is we can say dot toast container data position right. Then we're going to use this transform. And if we have the position on the left, then we're going to use negative. That should hopefully fix all of our problems. So in our script, let's say position, whoops, position is going to be math.random greater than 0.5 top right, top left. So halftime will be on the left, halftime will be on the right. That's not working. Something is going on. Let me click show toast. It is not doing what I expect. I probably don't have my show class. Translate X 0. Oh, duh. I need to select the toast inside of here. So get the toast. There we go. That's saved. Nothing is quite working as I expect. Translate X 110%. Translates to X of 0 when the show class is added. Just see what's going on. Click show. It is showing this. It says it's in the correct position, but it's off the screen. Oh, the CSS specificity gets me every time. This selector is more specific than this one. So we can just make this more specific by adding the toast container into it. There we go. So now it's sliding in. Halftime will slide in from one side, halftime the other side. There you go. You can see that they're perfectly sliding in. We also need to make the center work as well. So center, this should be translate of 0, 0, because this is going to translate us in the Y direction, negative 110%. Sure. So let's do that. So our position is going to be top center. Okay, actually, that doesn't quite work because we want it to come from all the way off the edge of the screen and not just slightly above its current position. Interesting. I'm trying to think of the best way to implement this. I could just do like negative 100 VH. That'll technically work. And no matter how far down the screen, it's always going to come from the top. That I think is fine. So let's come in here, make our translation here like 300 milliseconds, a little bit longer. The X and Y's are fine as is. It's just the top and bottom. So this is going to be for top center. And then we're going to also need to do one for bottom center, because the bottom center needs to come from positive 100. So if we set this to bottom, we do the animation. Yeah, they're working as expected. And you kind of see a little bit of jankiness of everything moving up one by one. And that's just because we're adding these to the bottom of the list. So like the thing is there and then it slides into place. So everything else has to move up to account for it. That's okay. That's actually how this library is working as well. You can see when we click show toast, if we do it newest on top, you can see it just kind of pushes them down. It's fine. And it's really hard to work around. So I don't think we're going to worry about that right now. So that gives us our positions with our translations. So we got the transition done. The next thing is the progress bar. I think that's really cool. So they have these really cool progress bars that you can see kind of slide down. And then once the progress bar gets to 0, then it disappears. So I think we should implement something like that. Also, we need to make it so that these disappear, actually. That should probably be the first thing we do. So autoClose, set to 1000. So if we show our toast after, or we should probably put it at the top, so it's a little bit easier to see. After a second, it's just going to disappear. It doesn't actually slide away. So we need to remove the show class first before we remove it. So that's actually really easy to do. So in our toast, whenever we call remove, what I want to do is instead of immediately removing it, I want to say this dot toast element dot class list dot remove show. And then I can say this dot toast element dot let's see here, add event listener for transition end. There we go. Then I can remove it. Yeah. And whoops, we can also check for this information up here. Okay. Let's see if that works. So now it's going to show up, and then after a second it'll fade away, and it should hopefully also remove itself because of that transition end. If we look, yeah, it's removed. And the reason this is working is because transition end essentially waits for a CSS transition to finish, and we're using transition here, so it's going to wait. As soon as this transition finishes, then it's going to execute the code inside of here. Okay, that looks good. Now, unfortunately, if we change our position, we're not going to get a fancy, cool animation, but honestly, changing position is something that's really niche, and it doesn't really need a fancy animation. You could implement it, but I don't think we need it. And kind of what I'm saying is if we come in here and we like set a set timeout for a second, and we said toast.update position is going to be, whoops, top left. Put that inside of here. Change this to 2. So, sorry, my dog just went berserk. I had to step away there for a second, but we were testing this. So we click it, shows up on the top right, and it shows up on the left. There's no animation. I think that's fine. That's something you're not going to change very often at all. Okay, moving on. Transition, the next step is going to be that progress bar. I like the idea of the progress bar. So we're going to have a property that's called like show progress. And by default, we'll set it to true, let's say. So let's just copy that into our toast. Up in the default settings, show progress is going to be true. So we need to actually change around our styles a little bit. And we can do this really easily with like a before after element. Even though we already have an after element on our toast for that close button. So it might be a little difficult to do this. Let's see how they have theirs implemented. Let's see. Okay, we can actually do this within just a before element because we just need one single rectangle. Pretty simple to do. So we can say toast dot progress before content is going to be empty this time. What I want to do is I want to put the position to be absolute. Inside of our toast, I'm going to change our overflow to hidden. That's just going to be so that if we click our show here, you can see that the progress bar cuts off on these rounded corners. Without overflow hidden, it would overflow those rounded corners. I'll show you when we get to that point. I'll just comment this out for now. So our progress bar, we're going to give it a height of like 2 pixels. We don't want it to be very big. And we're going to give it a width of 100% by default. Actually, let's use a CSS variable for this. So we're going to say progress is our CSS variable. And we're going to do a calculation where we do 100% times our progress. So our progress is going to be a value between 0 and 1. And by default, oh, we can figure that out in our JavaScript, sorry. Okay, so let's do a background color of let's just say blue for now. I mean, I'm not doing this for style purposes. I think that'll be fine. And we can say by default, we'll set our progress to like 50 just so we can see what it looks like. So we click show toast, nothing pops up because we need to add that progress class. So let's come in here. What did I call the property? Show progress. So we'll say set show progress takes in a value. And we'll say this dot toast element dot class list dot toggle progress based on this value. So you can see we have our progress bar. Obviously, it is not positioned correctly. Bottom 0, left 0, right 0. There we go. There we go. You can see our progress bar is on the bottom. It's a little bit large. Let me come back to our toast here for our script. I don't want it to auto close. I'm going to do top center just to see what we're working with. We can see our progress bar is really big for some reason. Oh, this should be 0.5. There we go. Now that makes sense. Okay. So now it's going to be 50% because we have 0.5. We changed it to like 0.25, 25%. If it's 1, it'll fill the full progress bar. And as you can see, if I zoom in really large here, and I show this on like the top right real quick, or there we go, click show, you can see very barely there's a little like pixel of blue that's sticking out of our corner here. If we change that overflow back to hidden, that is going to fix that pixel of blue. And if our progress bar was bigger, it would be more noticeable. But since our progress bar is small, it's pretty hard to notice. So there we go, we have our progress bar, it looks really good. And we're using the progress variable to define it. And by default, I'm not going to actually have a value for our progress variable. I'm going to define that in our JavaScript. So let's see. If we're showing our progress, we want it to be based on our auto close time here. So we actually probably need to save information about the time remaining for it to show. Yeah, we're going to need to save that. So we'll say like time visible. And by default, that'll be set to 0. Okay. And then we can just use a set interval, I believe. So like if value set interval, and this interval is going to be every like 10 milliseconds. Yeah, that's fine. And what we can do here, we should probably set our style.setProperty -- progress to 1. So by default, we're starting our progress at 1. So we're going to set an interval, and inside this interval, we're just going to update this progress variable by taking the time that it has been visible. We're going to say like time visible divided by our auto close. We're not saving that anywhere, so we need to save that. So inside of our auto close, we're going to say this dot auto close equals value. So then we can divide by our auto close value. Try to find that up here. There we go. Make sure this is this. So this is going to give us our proportion right there. And then all I need to do is just update our time visible. So the best way to do that is actually just say this variable is going to be equal to time shown, or like date shown. We're gonna do like shown. We'll do visible sense. There we go. I like that naming. And then inside of here, we're just going to say this dot visible sense equals new date. There we go. And then inside of here, we can say visible sense. What I want to do is I want to get a time visible variable. And it's just going to be our current date minus this date. Okay. I think that'll work. Clearly something's not working. I don't even know if I have everything set up properly yet. We're not getting any errors. Let's just do a console.log of here. See if it's even running this. Okay, yeah, it's definitely running that. So our visible sense property should be set to the current date. So let's just print that out. We're going to print out time visible. See what this gives us. Console. Okay, it's definitely giving us a value, which is good. So our toast element, if I inspect this real quick, oh, duh. It's because our auto close right now is not set to anything. It's set to false. Let's actually make it so it can auto close. There we go. Our progress bar is doing the exact opposite of what we want it to do. We want it to go the other direction. So let's fix that next. What I want to do is I want to say that we're going to do 1 minus this value. And then in our styles, I want the, let's see, what's the best way to do? We could just say like display, oh no, we want to say margin on the left is auto. That way it's always going to be as far pushed to the right as possible. I believe that'll work. There we go. We actually probably want the margin on the right though to be auto. And honestly, I don't think we even need that. It'll just do it. Yeah, do it on its own. There we go. And then once it gets to 0, it closes the progress bar. We obviously need to make sure we clean up these intervals though, and these timeouts. So let's save a variable for that. We'll say progress interval. And our progress interval is going to be equal to that. And then in our remove, what I want to do is I want to take our progress interval and I want to clear it. Yeah, so we'll say this dot, whoops, I already had this copied. Clear interval of that. And I want to clear my timeout as well. Copy that over, paste that into here. So if we have a timeout, I want to clear it. Okay. So now for our auto close, we can actually make it so if we change our auto close, it'll not reset the time, but it'll take into account the time that we've already had because we have this visible sense property. Let me think. Yeah. Actually, this visible sense we should probably put inside of our auto close. Because if we're resetting our auto close, we want to reset our visible sense. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. I think that works still. Yeah. And if we change our auto close, so for example, I say toast.update auto close, and I set it to 2000 milliseconds. And I do this after a certain period of time has elapsed. So like if I do it after 1 second, you can see our progress bar will reset, and then it'll count down from that 2000. Okay, and everything is working. I don't think we have any errors. There we go, and we're making sure we're cleaning up all of our memory. So that, I believe, is working. I feel like we're missing something, but it seems to be working so far, so I think that's good. I guess what happens if we set show progress to false? So if we just say show progress false, it should hopefully just work. Yeah, there's just no progress bar. And I don't think we'll have any errors in the console. Nope, no errors. Okay. Let's see. Pausing on hover. I don't really care to implement that. It doesn't really matter, in my opinion. Same with pausing on focus loss, closing on click. We already have that. Class name, styles, more styles, draggable. Don't care about that. Don't care about that. Delay. Honestly, I don't think delay needs to be implemented because you could just use a set timeout, so we don't need that. So that's pretty much everything. Maybe we should do these pause on hover then. So we'll do pause on focus loss and pause on hover. Okay, so this is going to be really easy. We just set a variable up here called paused, which is equal to false by default. And then anytime that we lose focus or that we hover, we want to pause it. And we're going to do those based on variables. So let's get rid of this show because we're not implementing that. We could say pause on hover value. This is going to work very similar to what we did for canClose. Pause on hover. Yeah, so if it's true, we want to add the event listener for, is there an event listener for hover? I don't think there is. JS hover event. I think you just have to do mouse enter and mouse leave. Oh, I guess mouse over. There we go. That's perfect. Mouse over. Okay. And we're also going to remove the event listener for that. Okay. And we need to create a variable for that. We're going to call this hover pause binded. We don't even need to bind it. Hover pause. This is just going to be a function. is going to set this dot hover, or this dot pause equals false. Yeah. We also need to add an event listener for mouse leave too, I guess, though. So we're going to have hover pause and hover. I guess we could just. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. So hover pause is going to pause it on hover. And this is going to be like. Actually, we'll just call these variables pause and unpause. I like this way better. So it's just going to set pause to false or true. I have these named the wrong thing. So unpause sets it to true. Oh no, I had it right. There we go. So here we can just pass unpause, and on the mouse leave, we can pass pause, copy these, paste them down, and instead of add, it is remove. So now if the pause variable is true, then we essentially want to not update any of this information. So let's see what the best way to do that is. Because obviously we could just say, like if this dot pause return, but it's still going to be counting the difference between our date and the visible sense. So that's not going to quite work as I expect it to. So instead of doing this visible sense, I think I do need to do a counter. So we're going to say, what I could do is I could say like, let last render last time called equal new date. Okay. Yeah, this will work. This will work. And in here, we can just constantly update last time called. So new date. So what I can do here is I can take the current date minus the last time called, and that'll give us something we can subtract from our variables. So we'll say time visible. There we go. That's what we need. We can get rid of where we set. I believe we set it in our autoClose. We don't need to set this anymore. Okay. So I'm just changing this around how this works. So our time visible is going to be our last time called minus our new date minus our last time called. We're going to get our time visible minus equaled or added that. And then this, I'm going to go down there. It's a little bit messy, but I think this is what I want. I can clean this up a little bit by saying this goes in here and this goes in here. So if it's not paused, do that. Okay, let me think about this real quick to see if this works. So what we're doing is we're getting the last time this function was called. And every time that this set interval runs, we're getting the last time called. It doesn't matter if it's paused or not. And then when it unpauses or when it's not paused, we're just taking the current date and we're subtracting the last time that we called this function. So it's going to be just the time between these two calls. So it'll be around 10 milliseconds. We're going to add that to our current time visible, and then we're going to take our time visible variable and divide it by this autoClose here. Let's see if that works. Show toast. Okay, it's already broken. Let's inspect and see what's going on. Private field unpause must be declared in an enclosing class. Oh, duh. So we're going to say, this should say like, it shouldn't say pause. It should say pause. Okay, actually we can call this pause and we can call this is paused, just so we have some good naming. We could say unpause and pause is paused. There we go. And then down here it should say is paused. Okay, let's see if that works. There we go. We're not showing our progress. Let's make sure we show that. Okay, the progress bar is not updating. That's a problem. If this dot is paused is false, then run this. By default, paused is false. Okay. Let me just do a quick console log of this dot is paused. It's probably going to be printing out true a bunch of times. It's printing out false. Okay, so it is running the code inside of here. It's just this variable is probably not getting updated correctly. Let's see what this looks like. Not a number. Oh, it's because we need to start it at 0 by default. There we go. It's decreasing. We had some weird jank going on there. Not quite what I wanted. See if that repeats itself. It does. Interesting. So our time visible is incrementing by too much at a time. That's really weird. Trying to think this through why this is doing this. And even when we hover, it's not actually pausing. Mouse over should be calling pause, and this should be calling unpause. That should fix part of the problem. No, still not pausing. Pause should be setting pause to true. If it's true, this shouldn't run. Just do a quick console.log here, and I'm going to change my autoClose to like a large number. Okay. Minimize that down. Show toast. Here, hover, still saying here. This pause is actually more difficult than I expected because we just need to like stop counting, but it sounds simple, but it's a little bit trickier than I expected. And it's all because like when we pause it, we can't just use the old date, because when you use the old date, it's way easier than having to do this like subtraction kind of stuff every single time. Instead of set interval, let's do request animation frame. This is actually going to be quite a bit easier, I think. So request animation frame actually gives us a time variable. And we can use this time variable. So let's call, we don't need to pass it this. We're going to call request animation frame. So we need to give it a function to pass. So we're just going to create a const func is equal to, name is kind of ugly, but it's fine, time. We're just going to copy and paste all of this into there. And we're going to request our animation frame for func. We don't even need to worry about this. Yeah, requesting animation frame for that. And then we also need to request it again here. I think we can pass it like a default time. So like request animation frame takes in a callback. There's a cancel animation frame. Okay, that's good. Thought there was a way to change the start time of it. Request animation frame start time. Let's see. Not quite. Okay, doesn't look like there's a way to do that. That's fine. We could just say if last time equals null, last time equals time, return. We could say let last time equal, no, we don't have to equal it anything. Okay. And then here we could say time minus last time. See if this works a little better. Okay, we're messing up something. See, we had an error in our console. Nope, no error. Let me just read our code. So the last time equals null. Oh, we can't return here. We need to call request animation frame again. There we go. Still not right. Okay. And is it even logging out here? Okay. Last time called is not defined. Where do I have that? There we go. We don't need that. That went really fast. Very, very fast. Let me see. Gosh, what is this? This time variable should be milliseconds, I believe. Let me just print it out. Do time minus last time. It's constantly growing. Oh, because we're never updating our last time. There we go. Gosh, it has that huge jump. What is going on? This time visible, I think there's something really weird going on here. Let's just print out what our time visible is. Show the toast. Like, it seems like it updates pretty smoothly. Try that again. Yeah, it seems like it updates smoothly. Like, nothing seems to be jumping in my opinion. So let's print out what this value is, because maybe it has something to do with like rounding or something. I don't know. Inspect. Console. Okay, there was a big jump there. There was a really big jump. I saw it. Scroll up a little ways. It jumped from like 10% to essentially 90% almost instantly, I thought. Yeah, here we're at 10%, 10%, 10%, 10%, 50%. That's interesting. Oh, duh. It's because we're changing our autoClose here. So if we change our autoClose, it's going to mess with all of our timings for everything. So if we change our autoClose, oh yeah, duh, we just say this dot time visible equals 0. There we go. That fixed that. Now we just need to obviously clean this up. So we can say, when we call request animation frame, how does this work? Return value, let's see how we can return it. Every time we call it, yeah, we just need to update it. So what we can do is we can say progress. We'll still call it progress interval. It really doesn't matter. Every time we call this, we just need to set, whoops, this is in the wrong location. There we go. We just need to set our progress interval every time. That way we clean this up. There we go. So now if I console.log time, come over here, click show toast, and I inspect, go over to my console, it's still not cleaned up, and that's because instead of calling clear interval, we need to call remove, what is it called? Cancel animation frame. There we go. Let's inspect, go to the console, it's printing, and as soon as it's done, boom, done. No more printing, so it clears out that animation. Perfect. Okay. So now we got a progress bar showing. I like it, I like it. We also need to, so if we hover, it'll pause. It's not doing anything with the pause though, so that's the next thing we need to work on. Mouse over this dot pause should say this dot is paused equals false. Let's just see what's going on in here. I guess it's the unpause function. I care more about what's happening inside pause. Oh, it's probably the this property thing again. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Console.log this. Get rid of all these parentheses. There we go. Okay. Inspect the page. Go to the console. Gotta make sure this console log is removed as well. Yeah, when I'm hovering, it's doing absolutely nothing. It's not calling that function on mouse over. Oh my gosh, I think I know exactly what it is. It would really help if we passed pauseOnHover as true. There we go, stopped the countdown. It doesn't stop the autoClose though. That's the next thing we have to work on, but man, am I an idiot. So auto close. We can't quite do a set timeout, can we? Because if it's paused, we need to pause that timer. So we can just use this time visible here. And we can again do a request animation frame up here. So we can say, yeah, we can say request animation frame for our func. We call it that, sure. Const func, which takes in a time. Oops, man, I cannot type today. Okay, takes in a time. We have our time visible. So here, what I want to do is I want to change around how this works, I believe, because this is updating our last time. This is the thing updating our time visible. I want to update time visible inside of autoClose, because that's the one that actually cares about the time visible. Okay, get our last time information up here as well. Here we go. Get this little if check. And we're going to call this autoClose interval. So this dot autoClose interval is equal to that. There we go. And here it should say the same thing. So we're duplicating a lot of this code, and then we're going to unduplicate it by removing it from here, because we don't need that, we don't need that. We don't need this. We don't even need this time variable anymore. It doesn't matter. This doesn't matter. All we're saying is if it's paused, take the time visible. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Okay. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So up here, what we can do is just do our code to remove it. So if I removed this down here too soon, let me back it up a few steps. Okay, I guess this is the only thing I removed. So we want to take our time visible and increment it. And then if our time visible is greater than or equal to our autoClose, then this dot remove. There we go. It's that simple. And then what we can do is our request animation frame thing again. Okay. But this time, I'm going to return after this. Because if we remove it, obviously we shouldn't create a new animation frame. Okay, get rid of the timeout related stuff. So if the autoClose timeout, we don't even need that anymore, I don't think. Yeah, because we'll just set the time visible back. AutoClose is our value. Okay, I think this is what we need. Down here, let's get rid of all that extra code we don't need. And then we just need to make sure that if it's paused, not do any of this. So if it's not paused, then we can increment everything. Okay, let's see if this works. Automatically error. Kind of what I expected. Console. Private field autoClose timeout. Duh. Down here, we changed it to autoClose interval. And this should say clear animation frame. Okay, it's not quite working. Reference time is not defined. All the way up here, time minus last time. We don't need this in the show progress. That can be removed. Still got some errors though. Go to our console. Printing out a toast. I don't know why we got a toast being printed out. Oh, it's because our pause has toast being printed in it, I think. Yeah, we can get rid of that. Doesn't look like anything is working. Let's go into our autoClose here, because this is where all of the magic should be happening. Console.log this.time visible. Let's just see if this is incrementing up as we expect. Not a number. this dot time visible equals 0. Time minus last time. If last time is equal to null, then we're not doing anything. Oh, this should be removed. I don't know why that was up there. Okay, that went really fast. What is our auto close time? Okay, I guess we'll just inspect this real quick and see why this counts so incredibly fast. Whoa, that counted way fast. I mean, that was huge. Time minus last time. Oh, we're never updating our last time. I forgot to do this again. There we go. Okay, show toast. That's working. There we go. Okay. And now if we hover over it and unhover, hover, unhover, hey, I think that actually worked. And if we get rid of this weird stuff that's changing our auto close time, hover, paused, unhover, unpaused. Yeah, that looks really good. And then as soon as we wait for it to go, boom, disappears. Now the last thing that we have left is the pauseOnFocusLoss. Boom. Set it to true. This is going to be significantly easier, I believe, because we have all the pause logic already done. So we can just copy this. pauseOnFocusLoss. And we're going to add a event to the document. So let me see. Window lose focus. MDN.js. Oh, that's not, I think it's like visibility. There's like an event for specifically, yeah, page visibility. Here we go. Visibility change. Okay, there we go. It's called visibility change. Okay. And what does it return to us? What does the actual event look like? Does it have no, okay, we'll just use document.visibilityState. So we need to create another function for this called like visibility change equals. Okay. So if it is hidden, then this dot pause is paused equals true. We can just say this dot is paused is equal to that. Okay. And we can use that function down here. Visibility. What did I call it? Visibility change. Make sure to find it up here. And right there. And we can remove the event listener down here. So now, hopefully, we show our toast. Let's go to a different window. And now we waited a while, we come back. It didn't pause. pauseOnFocusLoss. Let's make sure I spelled this the same everywhere. pauseOnFocusLoss. Should be calling this visibility change. Let's just do console.log of our visibility state. Not even calling this function. It should definitely be calling this function whenever our visibility changes. So maybe I spelled this wrong. Visibility change. Visibility change. Visibility change. It should definitely be evoking unless it's not supported. It definitely looks like it's supported for a long time. Let me see. Not supported. Okay, but it definitely has been supported for a long time, so we should be fine. Let's just see console.log here. Let's just make sure it's actually calling this in the first place. Okay, it did call it. We can get rid of our other console logs that we don't need. Where's that one we don't need? There we go. Get rid of this one. should be, let's see, console hidden visible. So hidden, okay, this dot is paused is equal to true when it's hidden. Do we call it is paused everywhere? Yeah, is paused, is paused, is paused. Let's just console log this. Let's see, okay, console show toast. Move away, okay, true, it is hidden. False, it is visible, but our thing is still updating itself. And it shouldn't be. Let's print out this to see what this is. Because maybe our this is referencing the wrong thing. Show the toast. No, it is referencing our toast. And right now paused is set to true. When we come here, it's clearly not pausing. Our time visible is still updating, even when paused is set to true. What? This doesn't make any sense. Oh, it's probably because request animation frame doesn't run when you lose focus on the page. Oh, okay, let's see. Okay, so it loses focus. When the page loses focus, it stops calling our event listeners, our animation frame event listeners. This is a bit of a pain because we kind of set this all up assuming that these are constantly going to be running. So let's see, we'll go back up to our autoClose. We need to essentially change this to a variable that's like should unpause. So if the visibility is visible, then this should be set. And then we can say if this dot should whoops. Make sure I define that out here. This is a bit hacky, but I think it'll work. Should unpause, then last time equals null. Let's try it. Show toast, okay. Move over here. Move back. That did something. Definitely did something. Oh, and then we need to say this dot should unpause. Equals false. Okay. So essentially what I'm doing with this is I'm saying, hey, once our page becomes visible, we need to unpause. But our timer has been running in the background for a long time. Like we haven't been updating our last time. So we should just reset everything and reset our update time. So when I come back, yeah, it's working now. We come back here, come back, yeah. And then it removes itself. Okay. It's a bit hacky. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it works. And that finally is the last step that we needed to do in order to make this work exactly the same as the React Toast. And honestly, it's not too much code with, everything included. Well, that took a little bit longer than expected, but overall it turned out great. Now, if you want to see a shorter project of me live solving a multi-step form in JavaScript, it's going to be linked over here. And with that said, thank you very much for watching and have a good day.